Zavim, and there should be Aleph Hey. If one had a single Zav emission that is as lengthy as three emissions, which is equivalent to in duration to the time it takes to walk from Gad Yavne to Shiloh, which is equivalent to the length of time two emergence and two dryings off, he is a full Zav. If he had a single Zav emission as lengthy as two emissions, he conveys tumor to couches and seats and requires immersion in a spring, but he is exempt from an offering. Rabbi Yossi says they did not say that a single lengthy admission is counted as multiple admissions unless it is as lengthy as three. But, I'm sorry. Uh, okay. Vav. If one had an Azav admission by day and one during the following twilight period, or one Zav admission during twilight and one the next day, it is not if it is known that part of the admission is from the first day and part from the second, his status is certain to respect to both the offering and the tuma. But if it is uncertain whether part of the admission is from the first day and part of it is from the next day, his status is certain with respect to tuma and uncertain with respect to the offering. If he had a Zav admission on two consecutive days during twilight, his status is uncertain both with respect to tuma and with respect to the offering. If he had one Zav admission during twilight, his status is uncertain with respect to tuma. All can become tamei through the admission of Zav. Even converts and even slaves, whether as emancipated slaves or unemancipated slaves, a deaf person, a deranged person, a minor, a castrated person, and a naturally sterile person. Regarding a tumtum and androgen, we assign to them the astringencies of males and the astringencies of females, and they become tamei through a discharge of blood like a female and through a white admission like a male, and the tumor status is one of uncertainty.
Okay, so we just sort of jumped straight into Zavim after being away for a while. We just want to be clear that the Zav emission is not the same as a Keri emission. It's not. It's a different kind of flux that comes out of the male organ, but it's not the same as semen. So and I think the most obvious difference, I think, is the fact that the Zav emission comes out of the male organ when he doesn't have an erection. Okay, it just sort of seeps out, and that's the idea over here. Okay, so now in Mishnah base over here, we come across the fact that actually there are a number of ways of getting out of diagnosing somebody as a Zav, because we can attribute it to some external factor, and thereby exempt him from having to go through all of the purification process of being a Zav, which is a bit of a drag. At any rate, b'shiva drachim, there are 7 different ways that we inspect the Zav, bodkim et hazav, ad shelo nizkak leziva, before he has been diagnosed as a Zav. Okay, in other words, before the first emission, for the first emission and the second emission. So the first emission only turns him into the equivalent of a Balkari. So he's only got that very light toma. He goes to mikveh, and that night he's already tower. Okay, as opposed to if he has 2 emissions, that's going to make him a Zav. And once he's had the 2 emissions, as we're going to learn, that's now he's now muhsak as that, and the third emission is we don't bother checking him, because he's already going to have to go to Mayim Chaim and find himself a spring somewhere to tovel, and the only thing that the third one is going to add is the korban. Okay, so we're going to see that now. So what are the 7 different heterium, let's say, of how to get a guy off the hook? Ameliorating factors, we'll call them. B'machal, if he ate something that didn't agree with him, or there was some kind of food that might have caused this to happen. B'mishte, or by drinking. B'masa, if he carried something heavy. B'kfitza, if he jumped too high. B'choli, or if he was sick. B'mara, if he saw a woman, even though he didn't have any, as we'll see that it's explicit in the Mishnah, if he saw a woman, or behirhor, or if he fantasized about a woman. Okay, hirher ad shelo ra'a, or shera'a ad shelo hirher, even if they are independent things. So if he just saw a woman and didn't think anything more of it, or if he had a fantasy even without seeing a woman, in either case, that can be used as an explanation for the ziva, and it doesn't count as a ziva. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, afilu ra'a behema chaya va'of mitaskim ze im ze. Even if he saw animals or birds coupling. Afilu ra'a bigdei tzeva ha'isha, or even if he saw a woman's colored undergarments, that would be enough to pin the ziva on and say that doesn't count as a ziva. Okay. Now, having seen this going on, Rabbi Akiva now comes and gives us the coup de grace. Says afilu achal kol machal bein ra bein yafeh. If he ate any kind of food, b'shasa kol mashke, or drank any kind of drink, we can pin the ziva on that. And there's this silence in the room as the Chachamim turn to him and say, Amru lo, ein kan ziva me'ata. If that's the case, then where are you going to find the guy who hasn't eaten or hasn't drunk and he still had a ziva? He had he had a cup of tea this morning, and you're going to say, oh, that's the ziva was because of that. Amr lahim, Rabbi Akiva says, ein achrayos zavim aleichem. Says, watch me not care. It's not our responsibility to create Zavim. If Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants to create a circumstance where we're going to have Zavim, then fine. But it's not our business to create Zavim. And if we can find any reason to get him off the hook, we can get him off the hook. My commentary doesn't specify if the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva, because it may well follow him because he's Rabbi Akiva. But at any rate, it appears to me that they disagreed with him, which to my mind probably means that the halacha is not like Rabbi Akiva.
It says right here the halakha is not in accordance with Rabbi Akiva.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. So we just follow the general rules. If they argued with him and said, "What are you talking about? How can it be?" and he's a das yachid. Okay, Mishen nizkak leziva. Once, however, he has been diagnosed as a zav, that is after 2 re'iyas and bodkina. So there's no need to check again, because onso osfeiko b'shichbas zarom tmeim, and anything that happens therefore an honest, if he saw if he saw a third re'iyah, even because of an accident or sveik, or even if there's a safek, if he saw if the third time it was keri or ziva, that's sveik or shichbas zarot meim, and because his semen itself is also going to be tameh shiraglaim nadavar, because at this point we have established the status quo is that he is a zav. And the only thing that we're now arguing about is whether or not he's going to bring a korban. Okay. Ra'a re'iyah rishona bodkinoso. So if he saw the first re'iyah, you do a bedika to see, okay, did you have anything weird to drink or eat, and all these 7 things that we mentioned at the beginning of the Mishnah. But shnia bodkinoso, if it's at the second time, again you check with him if there are any of these factors that can get him off the hook. But the third time we do not do another bedika because he has already been mochzak as a zav. Rabbi Eliezer Omer af b'shlishis bodkinoso. He says even the third time you need to check him mipnei hakorban, because there's the difference is the korban, and we want to see if he needs to bring a korban or not, and we want to be sure about whether or not he gets the korban. However, halacha does not follow Rabbi Eliezer. Rather, the korban will bring the korban even from a safek. He would bring it. Okay. Mishnah Gimel Taro'e Keri. So the first thing that happens is that a man has a seminal emission. Eno mitame beziva me'es la'es. For 24 hours after that emission, he is not going to be eligible to be a zav. Okay. Rabbi Yossi Omer Yomo says no, not 24 hours, just till the end of that day. And halacha will probably not follow Rabbi Yossi in this case. I'm thinking because he's a das yachid. Goy shera'a keri v'nisgayer. What happens if a goy had a seminal emission the day before he converted, the day that he converted? Okay, and now afterwards. Miyad hu mitame beziva. Now, as opposed to the Jew whose seminal emission exempts him for 24 hours, the goy, as soon as he goes into the mikveh and comes out, he's like a tinok shenolad, and everything in his past life is wiped clean. Okay, so we also ignore the fact that he had a seminal emission beforehand, and he is immediately eligible to become a zav. Haro Adam Makasha. So now we're taking a little bit of a tangent over here because because we're talking about 24-hour periods in which things happen or don't happen. So now we switch to the woman who sees blood and who is struggling in childbirth. Ma'is la'is. So this is a 24-hour period that we're talking about. So this is called this is sorry Adam metame b'taros lemafria. All right, so this is talking about what we were talking about at the beginning of Nida, the 24-hour period when she has to be concerned backwards. Did she handle any taros? So in those cases that's a 24-hour period going backwards. Hamake es abdo. If somebody strikes his slave, and you're concerned about did he heal, did he not heal within the 24 hours? Because avdo yom yomayim. So the Torah says yom yomayim, a day or 2 days. Okay, that we interpret as me'es la'es. It's 2 days. That is one day. So the 24 period almost invariably overlaps with the overlaps between 2 days. Kilev she'achal basar meis. So if a dog ate a kazayas of corpse flesh, and then the dog died, so then the dog can no longer screen against the tumah, and you've got to be concerned that if it died inside an ohel, then the ohel will become tameh. All right, we saw this in Maseches Ohelos. Now, how long does the corpse flesh stay inside its body before it's digested? And we said that in Ohalos we said that the halacha is that's 3 days. Shlosha yamim me'es la'es. In other words, 72 hours from whenever the dog ate the corpse flesh, we considered that the corpse flesh remains intact inside the dog's body, and if it dies subsequently, then it will be matzame ba'ohel. Shlosha yamim me'es la'es harehu kabriyaso. And then the flesh that's inside it will remain in the status of flesh. Okay, Mishna Daled. Hazav metame es hamishka b'chamisha derachim. So now we're jumping into the halachas of how tumah is transmitted by a zav. Okay, and this is now talking about basically mishkav tumah. Okay, so how does he transmit it? In 5 different ways. Letame adam litame begadim. Letame adam, or to be matame another person, or to be matame clothing. Okay, Omed, if he stands on something that is designed to be stood on, that is susceptible to tumah. So, for example, a carpet. A carpet is designed to be stood on. If a zav stands on the carpet is tameh. Okay, even if he's wearing shoes. And even if there are piles and piles of other things on top of the carpet, the tumah penetrates all the way down to whatever the lowest level is that can be makabel tumah. Okay, Omed, Yoshev, he sits on something. If he sits on a chair, the chair is tameh. And not only that, but it becomes a mishkav. Okay, it's not just that it receives the next level down of tumah, the chair itself will become a mishkav. It will become and you'll see in the end of the Mishnah how that it retransmits tumah. Okay, Omed Yoshev Shochev, if he lies on something, also, basically he's placing his weight on things. Nitzla, if he is suspended by the thing. So he has a case where imagine you had a big balance scale, and you had on the one side is a couch, and the other side is the zav. Okay, and the couch is heavier than the zav. Now the couch pushes him upwards, and now he is considered as if he is suspended from that couch, and now the couch will receive his tumah. And of course, needless to say, if he is heavier than the chair that's on the other side, then he's effectively lifting it up. So that's also going to transmit the tumah. But nishan, if he leans on it, even leaning is sufficient of him placing his weight on the thing and supporting his. Oh wait, hold on. what I said a second ago is that if he lifts something, then it will become tamei. That's not true. It's only if his weight is, if the object is supporting his weight. So that's if the couch lifts him up. So if the couch is heavier than him on the balance scale and it lifts him. So what's common between all of these 5 ways is that the object is supporting his weight, whether it's standing, sitting, lying, suspended, or leaning. It's supporting his weight. Then the tumah of mishkav is transmitted to the other object. The mishkav itself. Now, let's talk about this couch that became a mishkav. It will be matame a person in 7 ways. Okay, how? Letame begadim, and not only that, but the person who sits on this chair, for example, his clothing will also become tame. Omed, if a person stands on it, Yoshev or sits on it, Shochev lies on it, Nitzle, if the person is suspended by it. So let me just make sure which direction we're talking about. Yarda Hakaf Sheba Mishkav. Yes. So it's in the same direction. If the Mishkav supports the weight of the person who's receiving the Tumah. Okay, the Nishan, or he leans on it. Not only that, but also Maga and Masa. If somebody picks it up or touches it, or even then he will become Tame from the Mishkav. Okay, so the Zav does not, so what's the difference between the two is Maga and Masa, is that the Zav does not transmit Tumas Mishkav by touching or by carrying. He'll just transmit, he'll transmit a single, he is still an Avatuma. So if, for example, he picks up a cup, the cup will, the cup is not, it will become Tame as a Rishon. Not as a, let's say it's something that's like if he picks up a shoe, the shoe is inherently able to become a mishkav because it's meant to take a person's weight. But he picks up a shoe, the shoe will just become a rishon. It does not actually become a mishkav and it won't transmit tumah back to a person. But if he puts the shoe on his foot and walks in it, then the shoe becomes a mishkav. And it will transmit tumah to another person by touching or by carrying. Okay, that's it for the new
You have to
mission.
run. You have to run.
You don't have to run. I've already davened. I went to do
Daven.
it this morning. That's why I was late.
All right. Makshir. Gimel. Hey Gimel.
Yeah.
Turning produce into which a leaf drips, and he mixed them so that they may dry. Reb Shimon says they are included in the law of water is place, but the sages say they are not included in the law of water is place. If someone measured a cistern, whether along its depth or along its width, it is included in the law of water is place. And these are the words of Reb Tarfon. Reb Akiva says, along its depth, it is included in the law of water is placed, but along its width, it is not included in the law of water is placed. If one stretched out his hand and his foot or its reed into a cistern and to ascertain whether it contains water, it is not included in the law of water is placed. To ascertain how much water it contains, it is included in the law of water is placed. If you threw a rock into the cistern to ascertain whether it contains water, the water that splashes is not included in the law of water is placed, and that which is on the stone is tahor. If
Okay.
someone,
That's it. That's 3. Yeah. Okay. Nita Dalad Vav.
Okay. Concerning a woman who bleeds in labor within 80 days or of a female birth, any blood she discharges is tahor until the child is born. But Reb Eliezer declares it tameh. They said to Reb Eliezer, if even in a case where the Torah was stringent regarding blood discharge during a period of relief, it was lenient regarding the blood discharge in labor, then in a case where the Torah was lenient regarding blood discharge during a period of relief, is it not logical that we must be lenient regarding the blood discharge in labor? Reb Eliezer replied, it is sufficient for the derived law to be the same as the source law. From what Tumah did the Torah spare her is from the Tumah of Ziva, but she is Tameh as in Nida. Throughout all 11 days of potential Ziva, a woman is presumed to be Tahor. If she sat and did not examine herself, whether it was inadvertently by mishap or deliberately, and that she failed to examine herself, she is Tahor. If the time for her fixed period arrived and she did not examine herself, she is tameh. Reb Meir says if she was in a hiding place and the time for her fixed period arrived and she did not examine herself, she is tahor because terror expends the discharge of blood. However, during the days of Zav, a Zava and one who is observing a day free of discharge against the day for on which he discharged bloods, they are presumed to be tameh. Concerning a child who emerges from its mother through the abdominal wall, the mother does not observe on account of the days of Tuma and the days of Tahara, and is not liable on account of an offering. The Reb Shimon says this child is a naturally born child. All women become contaminated once the contaminating flow is in the outer room, for its state are discharged from her flesh being blood, but a Zav and one who emitted semen does not become contaminated until their tumor exits to the outside of their bodies. Okay.
Okay,
Uh,
Para, Gimel Zion.
if the parrot did not want to leave, we do not take a black cow along with it, so that people should not say they slaughtered the black cow, not the red cow, so that people should not say they slaughtered two paras adumos. Rabbi Yoshi says it is not because of that reason, but rather because it's stated, and he shall take it out, which means it alone. And the elders of Israel would precede the delegation by foot to the Mount of Oil, and there was an immersion room there. And they would render tummy the Kohen who was to burn the power on account of the Sadducees, so that they should not say that the Para Aduma service was performed by those who had experienced sunset. They would place their hands on him and say to him, my master Kohen Gadol, immerse once. He would descend into the mikveh and immerse, come up and dry himself. And there were logs arranged there either by cedar, laurelwood, or boxwood, or smooth fig wood. And they would make it into sort of a tower, and they would open windows in it, and its face would face westward. They would bind the paraduma with a rope of rush and place it on top of the pyre, with its head toward the south and its face toward the west. And the Kohen would stand to the east with his face to the west. He would slaughter the paraduma with his right hand and receive the blood in his left hand. And Yehuda says he would receive the blood in his right hand, but put it into his left hand and sprinkle it with his right hand. He would dip his finger into the blood and sprinkle blood 7 times in the direction of the Holy of Holies. For every sprinkling there would be a dipping. When he would finish sprinkling, he would wipe his hand on the body of the paraduma. He would then descend from the pyre and kindle the fire with twigs. Reb Kiva says with palm fronds.
Okay. Some more base Aleph.
Base Aleph. There are laws that apply to offerings of individuals that do not apply to communal offerings, and there are laws that apply to communal offerings that do not apply to offerings of individuals. For the offerings of individuals make it tomorrow, but communal offerings do not make it tomorrow. The offerings of individuals come as both males and females, but communal offerings come only as males. With regard to offerings and individuals, the owner bears responsibility for offering them and bears responsibility for offering them ninasachim. But with regard to communal offerings, the owners do not bear responsibility for offering them nor responsibility for offering the nsachim, but they do bear responsibility for offering the nsachim once the offering has been brought. There are laws that apply to communal offerings that do not apply to offerings of individuals. The communal offerings override the strictures of the Sabbath and override the laws of Tumah, whereas offerings of individuals override the strictures of the Sabbath and the laws of Tumah. But Meir says, but they are not the kavitim of the Kohen Gadol and the Yom Kippur offerings of individuals, that they override Sabbath and Tumah. Tuma. Rather, it is because the time for the offerings is fixed. Regarding an individual katos whose owner received atonement, it must be left to die. But communal katos whose owners have received atonement are not left to die. Rabbi Yehuda says they must be left to die, and Rabbi Shimon says that just as we find with regard to the offspring of a katos and with regard to the tomorrow of a katos, and with a katos whose owners have died, the matter was stated only regarding the katos of an individual and not regarding communal katos. So too, with regard to a katos whose owners have received atonement and where katos year has passed, the matter was stated only regarding the katos of individuals, but not communal katos. In some respect, the laws of Kedoshim are more stringent than the laws of Tamora. In other respects, the laws of Tamora are more stringent than the laws of Kedoshim. Kedoshim can make a Tamora, but Tamora cannot make a Tamora. Kedora cannot make a Tamora. A community and partners can consecrate Kedoshim, but they cannot make a Tamora. And if we can consecrate a Kedoshim, fetuses and limbs, we cannot make a Tamora with them. The laws of Tamora are more stringent than the laws of Kedoshim, for the Tamora's sanctity takes effect on a permanently blessed animal, and the animal does not become deconsecrated with respect to being shared and worked with. Rabbi Yossi, the son of Yehuda, said the Torah treated an unintentional act like an intentional act with regard to the Morah, but it did not treat an unintentional act like an intentional act with regard to Kedoshim. If Elazar says a mixed breed, a terefa, an animal born through cesarean section, a tumtum, and androgen do not become sanctified and do not sanctify other animals.
Okay.
And
Kiddushin. Dalid base.
Shasukin, anyone who recognizes his mother but does not recognize his father, foundlings.
No,
Anyone who
no, father. Then foundlings.
Oh, sorry, okay. Anyone who recognizes his mother but does not recognize his father, foundlings.
No,
Any,
but recognize his father. Period.
oh, you're right. This has a semicolon. I'm sorry. Recognize, not recognize his father. Foundlings, anyone who was taken in from the street and does not recognize his father or his mother, Abishua calls them Shukim Bedukim. All who are prohibited to enter into the congregation are allowed to intermarry with each other. The Yehuda prohibits it. But Elias says those who are definitely unfit with those who are definitely unfit is permitted. Those who are definitely unfit with those whose status is doubtful, whose wives and whose status is doubtful with those who are definitely unfit, and those who are status is doubtful with those who are status is doubtful are prohibited. Those whose status is doubtful are a Shishuki and a foundling and a Kupin. One who marries the daughter of a Kohen must investigate her through her mothers. There are 8. Her mother, her mother's mother, her mother's father, her mother and her mother, her father's mother and her mother, and her father's father, mother, and her mother. For if she is the daughter of a Levi or Israel, one more is added to them.
Okay. And Erevin.
Okay. Base. It is permitted to place the slats close to the wall, provided that a cow has its head and most of its body within drinking. Body within while drinking. It is permitted to place the slats at any distance, provided one
I'm
increases.
sorry. Actually, I have to run. I've got to get my son to a bus, so I'm going to actually stop.
Okay, all right. I'll finish it. Okay, finish it. All right. I'll see you
Okay,
tomorrow.
from yourself.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Mm.
Bye.